Hello, friends. Welcome to the Three and Out podcast. Dustin Pierce, David McReynolds, Gary Gray joining us via telephone today. This is a podcast all about West Texas football. We focus on Lee and Midland High, Greenwood, our private schools, talk a little UTPB, and then we each have a topic. Our big three, and then we're out of here, and that is the podcast. So, Dave, let's start with you, and you've got some information on Midland High, who's coming off a crazy nail-biter 1-point victory over Pebble Hills.
Yeah, this is one of those fun conversations you get to have with a coach.
That's right.
Especially at a program that admittedly, coach admits, they've struggled the last couple of years to have wins. He even mentioned how his seniors in the locker room after that win were like, man, Coach, this feels really good.
Yeah, we kind of like this.
Yeah, we kind of like this winning. So Coach was really pumped to have his players be able to experience a win, especially a hard-fought win. He mentioned his 12 sophomores that he's got starting on the team and how those 12 sophomores really matured a lot in a game like that where they had to come from behind. They had to fight for the end of the game to come away with the win. So he feels really good about where his team is after this last week. Feel like they made a lot of progress, had some bright spots, had some challenges. They continue to have problems with the big play. There were a number of times they had Pebble Hills in second and third and long.
Okay.
And still Pebble Hills was able to, either through penalty or either just connecting on the big play, was able to convert and get first down. So they've still got a lot of work that they're trying to do there as well, especially with that young secondary. There were a couple of times they got burned. But they're learning. He feels like they are learning with each one of those experiences. So, yeah, that 43-42 win over Pebble Hills sets them up for a really interesting week. This week as we travel to El Paso to play El Paso Franklin, who beat Permian two weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And who is a 2-0 team, really strong. And has a lot of weapons that Coach is concerned about. They have a quarterback that he says is one of the best athletes, best quarterbacks he's seen in that our team will probably play against. He feels like he'll be a D1 scholarship quarterback.
Wow.
And so we'll have that to contend with, as well as a receiver who is much like
Loic Fungi
from Lee out in El Paso. This kid, Stillwell is his name, and he is a kid that makes a ton of yards, makes a big difference on the field. So and they've got a balanced game as far as their running back. They have a running back that puts a lot of yards up and a lot of points on the board. So the defense is going to be tested this week. If you remember last year, Lee was in the track meet, or Midland High was in the track meet with Franklin.
Yes, they were.
And in that huge game. So this year, Coach says will probably be another track meet, and they're just hoping to keep their offense on the field, keep the El Paso Franklin offense off the field. That's going to be a key for them, and that their passing game is a strong thing. They kind of throw those short passes like you see if you watch a team like Texas Tech play, where they just kind of pick you apart with the 5 to 10 yard pass. He expects that same kind of offense as they play Franklin this week.
Hey, tons of momentum, though, coming off of, a 94-yard drive?
Yeah, to
win the game. And then for the defense to hold. I mean, that's a big deal. Those are things that not only are they huge momentum builders, but those are like things that kids remember and feed off of. That provides confidence long term.
Exactly. So. Gary's on the phone with us. He probably has some observations from that game. Gary, you got anything you want to throw in?
I think the most impressive thing was Midland High was able to establish their run game, which is something that's going to be so important as they travel to El Paso, because the only way to keep the Franklin team off the field is to run the ball and run the clock out. And so, between Daniel Garcia, Jordan Springer, 6 total touchdowns, all on the ground, they showed that, hey, we're going to run this power formation, wildcat formation, whatever we want to call it, with a Springer, and what we're going to do, yet El Paso Pebble Hills had trouble stopping them, knowing what was coming. So I thought that was really, really impressive. And who knows, being able to establish the run game, as we all know, may help even open up a little bit, help us offensively by opening up the passing game. So I'm looking forward to it. You have to remember, in 2 meetings last year, Midland High played Franklin, And I think over 100 points were scored the first game, and over 120 were scored the second game, and 80 of those were in the first half. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to hope that it's a different Midland High team showing up this year. So that's what I've got.
All right, let's talk Lee football.
Yeah,
I think it's that time of the regularly scheduled programming, huh? So Lee coming off a big victory over Abilene High. That game a little bit closer says the score than it actually was. Lee victorious 35-21. That game 35-14 for most of the game, especially in the second half. But Abilene High able to kind of make a game of it late. Coach's take, sloppy first quarter. Football's never easy is what he said. And you could kind of see the first road game of the season. But when your quarterback accounts for 5 touchdowns, normally you don't lose those games. Maybe in the Midland High Franklin context, that's the case. But Mikey Serrano responsible for 5 touchdowns, which is a really big deal. Loic Fungi caught 2 of those. Christian Romero, a junior, caught 2 of those. Again, his biggest takeaway from the Abilene High game was he said defensively we had 2 bad series. And it's almost like we forgot we were still playing. And we've got to learn how to hunker down and how to hold when we have big leads. So he's more concerned on the inverse end than Midland High. He's more concerned when we have big leads, we get a little apathetic. We allow a team to come down and score twice on us where we just had bad series. But some interesting things that he said, and before we break down this new game coming up with Abilene High, or not with Abilene High, I'm sorry, with Montwood. He had mentioned that this year, this is the closest group of guys that he's ever had. Definitely a lead, but maybe in his coaching career. And what he talks about is this is year 4 for him. And he goes, I think that these guys have finally been through my system, and they're clicking at levels that the first couple of years just didn't click. And I could tell that he was trying really hard to stay away from cliches, but he was going, I don't know how to describe how close they are. They're just so close. And we're seeing that that's become, in his mind, kind of a linchpin because he's like, yeah, they're talented, but they actually like each other. Yeah, they're talented, but they actually want to spend time with each other. Cool. Yeah, they're talented, but they actually listen to each other, And so this week they're going to play against a Montwood team who, just to be honest, not very good. They're 1-1 coming in. They're a team offensively. They're going to line up and throw the football 4 wide, 5 wide. Their running back is their best player. However, because of the lack of line support, they have a tendency just to heave it down the field. And Coach's direct quote was, the quarterback wants the ball out of his hands. He does not want to run. Defensively, they only bring back 2 guys. They're brand new in the secondary, and so they think they're going to be able to expose them there. Just give you some updated stats, some things that you need to know. Through 2 games so far, Loic Fungi, the program's all-time leading receiver in receiving yards and in touchdown receptions. So he's got 1,586 receiving yards in his career, 22 touchdowns, and the only category he hasn't topped yet is actual receptions, and he'll get that at the end of the year, no doubt. That's where he's eyeing Sheldon Bass, who has 103. Mikey Serrano, again, 5 touchdowns, but he also had 321 passing yards. That was a really big deal. So overall, a really, really good team this year for Lee. I think they have a lot to be excited about. Just a couple of things to note from an injury standpoint. Hayden Hall, who's the fullback, and the coaches love this guy. I think he's just a good kid, but he's also a talented kid. They just love him. He went out of the game towards the end. He had an injury, and they thought that he messed something up in his hand, but he just sprained his thumb, so he should be playing. He came in not a cast, but a little soft brace when I was meeting with Coach earlier this week. Seth Heller, who plays tackle, has a sprained ACL, so they're going to move his older brother, Zach, over to tackle, and another guy will play guard. So just a few things there, but, man, Coach is really excited about this group of guys. He's got a lot of things to attribute, but mostly closeness inside of the locker room that he said he just hadn't seen in all of his time at Lee. So
good chemistry on the team then.
That's right.
That's going to be great for them.
That's exactly right. So look for this weekend, a homecoming matchup, Dave, to probably be one of those games that, honestly, I don't think it's a trap game or anything like that, but it's a game where you could easily just kind of get robotic and mechanical.
Let your guard down.
So you're going to have to stay fresh, but it should be a game where Lee kind of puts on a show. And they've had two kind of close games to open the season, competitive games, but games in which, the other team has still scored. This may be a game where they shut the other team out and put on an offensive explosion.
So you're calling a potential blowout on this one?
I'm thinking this one is, just based on what we've seen Montwood do, a game where they lost in the last minute, the first game, and then a game against a 5A team where the final score was 56-53.
Wow.
And so I think this is a game where Lee's going to put up big points, and you're going to see a lot of guys get playing time in this one.
It could definitely happen. I know we've got a couple of big games also this week for Greenwood and for Midland Christian, and Gary had some stats or some information on those two games for us.
Yeah, let's talk about those other local teams. Greenwood, Rusty Purser, the head coach now, those guys are just dominating their opponents. They're ranked number 9 now in small 4A, 2-0.
Yeah.
Defense
That's
held
awesome.
Hereford to 186 total yards. Offense led by Weston Wilbur and Trey Cross had over 300 total yards. So they have their work cut out for them. It's a shallow water team who comes in 1-1. They're going to play in Greenwood, and they beat Greenwood last year 55-24. So that's going to be a good game. But congrats to the Rangers, ranked number 9 now. Midland Christian 1-1. They lost to 6A school El Paso Americas 35-28 at home. They had 2 turnovers and 9 penalties. El Paso, they had a running back that had 217 yards. And so we're going to see what happens there. It sounds like Coach Greg McClendon's got a little bit of a quarterback battle going on over there. But interestingly, the senior Riggs McDonald is not involved in that. In fact, it's 2 sophomores. So they should both get snaps this week. You talk about a tough schedule, though. They traveled down near San Angelo to play number 5 in 3A Division I, Wall. Wall is 2-0, perennial powerhouse. Last year, Midland Christian beat them by a point in Midland. So Wall's going to show up with a little bit of fight. And then over at Trinity, they returned to 6-man this year. They beat Marfa 52-6 to go to 1-1. And they've actually moved up. And I'm not really sure I understand what this ranking is, but it's number 2 in the independent rankings at sixmanfootball.com. So they travel up to Wilson, which is a little town outside of Lubbock, and they play the Lubbock Titans, and that game is Saturday. So congrats to those local teams, and hopefully they can continue to move forward and move up in those rankings.
I have an interesting stat on that Midland Christian game, too, that I heard from one of the parents.
Yeah.
They've met for 10 times, and that home team has won in every one of their meetings.
Wow.
So
is that right?
Yeah. So Coach McClendon is trying to break that.
There you go.
Break that string.
Wow.
So going to Wall to try to break that up.
Hey, one last thing on the rankings front. Lee has moved in. They're number 24 now in 6A rankings. So Lee Rebels were number 25 against Abilene. They would call that Abilene victory a good victory, moves them up to 24. And one last thing, Coach feels the 2 teams that they've played already are 2 teams that he thinks are going to be playoff contending teams.
Wow.
So he's excited about where they are so far.
That is good. That's encouraging.
Time for our 3 and out portion, where we going to kind of tell you something that's on our mind, something we're thinking about. And let's start with Gary.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to talk about this week, and it's as all of us have children, we try to raise children. Our listeners, I'm sure, have the same thing. Commitment's always a big thing that I stress to my children growing up, and it's a bit ironic right now that if you're looking for an example of commitment, you will not find that in the quarterback position in college football. 50% of the quarterbacks in the last 4 recruiting cycles have transferred, and some people I think have great reasons, but on occasion it's just, I'm going to take my toys and go somewhere else. You look at Ohio State, for example. Joe Burrow, who's the starter at LSU, was at Ohio State. Tate Martell, the starter at Miami, highly recruited. one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the nation his year. Matthew Baldwin at TCU. Yep. They've had quarterbacks coming in from Kentucky, West Virginia, Georgia. You can name Missouri, Northwestern, Mississippi State, Florida State. Just in the Big 12, Tech, UT, TCU, K-State, Baylor, A&M, all with quarterbacks that have either transferred out or transferred in. So no one seems immune. I will point out, though, that it seems to have worked well for Oklahoma, as they may have their 3rd quarterback in a row win the Heisman, all having transferred in, with Baker Mayfield from Tech, Kyler Murray from A&M. Yeah, and so, I'm a little concerned at what we're teaching these kids about, once you commit, stick with it. They certainly get no example from the professional ranks, as you take people like Ezekiel Elliott, who has a contractual obligation in my mind, but can for some reason sit out. So anyway, that's a bit of my rant today, but I guess it reaffirms the fact that whenever I can, I want to influence people to work on commitment and stick with it.
No, I think that's good, and great lesson for all of you at home. Hey, so mine's not so much of a rant as much as it's kind of a plea to our people of the Permian Basin. We have college football now locally. And I think sometimes it's easy to worry about the number that comes after the D and forget that college football matters. So we need to, in my mind, support UTPB football. And what we're going to start doing here on this podcast is we're going to schedule a call. I'm going to have a personal call every week with head coach Justin Kerrigan. And it may not be necessarily something we broadcast live, but we're going to try to bring you more information about what's going on with UTPB. They're coming off a 60-7 victory over Wayland Baptist, 508 yards total offense, only gave up 231 yards. And here's what's really interesting. So this Saturday, they're hosting Northern Michigan. That game will be at Grande at 6 o'clock. So I think this is a great way to go. And here's kind of an incentive. They're calling it Take a Kid to the Game Saturday. So you could literally take a kid up to age 12 for free, print a voucher off online on their website, bring it to the game. But it's so easy, I think, to talk about how, we don't like Midland and we wish Midland had this and we wish the Permian Basin had that. We have college football in our midst. And this coaching staff is doing everything they can to bring in great talent. You should scroll through their website and see the homegrown talent, but equally the talent from the Metroplex they brought in. They're starting brand new traditions, all kinds of things from when they arrive at Ratliff Stadium to when they come back at UTPB. They're really bringing a college football environment here. So my little plea to our people is let's support UTPB football and see what happens in this area. And I'm excited to bring you more from the head coach. We're going to start doing that starting next week right here on 3 and Out.
Hey, they're doing a number of things for the game day to tailgate things as well, right?
Right.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of that as well on the news, as they're trying to do some things to make the whole environment just great all day long.
That's right.
Over there. That's great. All right, Gary, if you have to have it get on an airplane, you just let us know. And
I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to let you go, David, and don't forget to mention the app. And I'm going to go ahead and get on this flight and hopefully see you guys tomorrow.
All right, Gary.
Good to have you join us.
Travel
Thanks, Gary.
safe.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, my not a rant, but I'm going to give us an early, even though it's just week 2 of college football. I think the Heisman watch is already beginning to take shape.
You
mentioned the number 1 man on that list right now with Jalen Hurts at OU, and he is topping the list after these first 2 games. And then Tua from Bama.
They're going to be going neck and neck all year.
They really will. They'll be 1-0. And then Burrow cracked into number 3 this week after his performance at Texas last week. So he's number 3. We'll go to the top 5. Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin.
That's it.
And then Justin Fields at Ohio State rounds out the top 5.
Man.
Isn't that crazy?
There we go.
So already, apparently if you wear red, you're in good shape. 4 of the top 5.
That's it. That's it.
Red uniforms.
Or if you were a quarterback who originally committed to another school. Just to go off of Gary's play.
Yes, exactly.
Well, hey, that's going to do it for the 3 and Out podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Again, all we want to do is bring you some snapshots of local football, call out our local heroes, and have a little fun while doing it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have a lot more next week on 3 and Out.
it.